The engines were finding life difficult. Summer had arrived, and the railway was flooded with more passengers and goods than ever before. Out of all the spots on the railway, the big station was by far the busiest, much to the dismay of poor Percy. Day in and day out, he kept busy scuttling about the yards, keeping the trucks and coaches in line. Thomas and Duck usually helped out whenever they could, but all engines were busy on their branch lines. As well as that, when the station was quiet enough, Percy was often called away to help Toby bring loaded stone trucks down to the harbor. While most of the engines appreciated Percy's hard work, the bigger engines thought differently of the situation.
Even though the situation for poor Percy is disgraceful, I will admit he's doing a fine job at keeping the yard in order, snorted Gordon.
Exactly, agreed Henry. Besides, if Percy wasn't here to shunt the yards, who would? Not to mention, if Percy wasn't here, we'd have to fetch our own coaches, and that would never do, pouted James. Can't you three look past shunting your own trains just once? Grumbled Thomas. You should be grateful Percy's even here at all. Shunting is not a duty that you three are above. Percy's been working hard enough for 3 engines for weeks now. That makes him just as important as any of you. Gordon hissed steam crossly.
I am one of the finest express steam locomotives in the world. I was specifically designed for pulling expresses, not shunting them. You and Percy, little Thomas, are the shunters, and shunters are not important.
Thomas and Percy scowled at the big blue engine.
You'll be pleased to know, then, said a well-known voice, that I've made other arrangements.
The engines looked down to see the fat controller standing in front of them.
Percy, from tomorrow, you will be back on goods work on Thomas's branch line.
Yes, sir, said Percy, relieved. Beg pardon, sir, asked Duck, but what about shunting the yards here? Thomas, Oliver, and I are still busy on our branch lines.
I know that, Duck, interrupted the fat controller. Which is why, he continued, I have purchased 2 new engines.
The engines were intrigued. New engines, sir? They asked.
I was in a meeting with the scrapyard manager at Barrow. I was discussing having scrap transported to there when I came across 2 tank engines, both of which were destined for the cutter's torch.
The engines shuddered at this.
Luckily, though, continued the fat controller, I made the decision to purchase them both, and in the last several months, both have been receiving major overhauls at our works. They have finally completed their tests, and both shall start work tomorrow. One will take up duties as our new station pilot at Knapford, while the other shall be assigned to do odd jobs around the railway. Edward, I'd like you to show them around.
Yes, sir, replied Edward. And with that, the fat controller walked away. I wonder what the new engines will be like, quizzed Thomas. Whoever they are, grumbled James, I just hope they're good shunters. The next morning, Edward was shunting the yards. As he was arranging some trucks, he spotted 2 unfamiliar cabs reversing towards him. These must be the 2 new engines, he thought. Hello there. Welcome to Sodor. But before Edward could finish, he was rudely interrupted.
Will you just be quiet, lad?
Edward was taken aback.
He's only being friendly, Rob. No need to be hostile.
Edward was surprised. 2 colorful industrial saddle tanks drew up on either side of him.
Well, I'm not going to stand for any more being pushed around by big engines,
scoffed the green engine. If you'd kindly refrain from being so abrupt, interrupted Edward, you'd see that I was merely trying to welcome you both to the railway. The green engine just snorted away to start shunting.
My apologies, said the blue engine. I'm Ronan. You've met my brother Rob, I see.
Edward smiled warmly. Pleased to meet you, Ronan. I'm Edward. May I ask, what's wrong with Rob? Has he always been so blunt?
Ronan sighed. I'm afraid so, he began. You see, it all began in west of London. Rob and I used to work in a coal mine in Birmingham. The big engines there always treated us like slaves. They always barked orders at us, and even told us that being industrial engines meant we should keep out of the way. Let proper engines handle the trains and all that.
Oh my, said Edward sympathetically. Thomas and I know how that feels all too well.
It wasn't all bad, continued Ronan. Following a safety inspection, the coal mine closed down, and we were transferred to Paddington Station to work as temporary station pilots. The usual shunters there at the time had to go in for a major overhaul. Rob and I worked well and kept the yards in good order, but unfortunately, treatment from the bigger engines at Paddington was no different from those at the coal mine. Same as usual, we were told that we were best kept tucked away out of sight and how we're never allowed out on the main line. Sadly, when the usual shunter returned, and our time at Paddington came to an end, no one wanted 2 industrial engines like us, and in fairness, we were both starting to wear out at the time. No one wanted to purchase us, or spend the funds to have us fixed, so we were sent to Barrow's scrapyard on a goods train one day. We sat on that siding for several weeks. We thought our days had finally come to an end, until one day, your controller came across us. Said he was in need of 2 new shunters to help with the increasing traffic of his railway. He kindly offered to have us restored, but Rob didn't seem too hopeful at our new beginning. You see, because we were subjected to so many years of mistreatment from being shunters, he feels it'll be the same thing here too. And, Ronan whispered under his breath, Rob won't admit this to anyone, but he wishes he could get out of the yard and pull trains of his own sometimes.
I understand Rob's feelings, sympathized Edward, but he needs to realize that not all engines are like that. On this railway, all engines are treated equally, regardless of their positions. And if he proves himself, I'm sure the Fat Controller will assign him to other duties. Ronan smiled.
It'll just take a bit of time for him to get settled in. Now then, enough chit-chat, let's get to work.
The 3 engines set to work. Edward showed the 2 engines around. Ronan proved to be a fast learner. He was quick to adapt to the shunting arrangements. The coaches and trucks were well behaved and prepared properly, and there were no more delays. He was also quick to make friends with the other engines. Even Gordon, Henry, and James were impressed. So much so that they didn't even consider ordering him about. But whenever Ronan was busy elsewhere, Rob was ordered to shunt at the big station. And unfortunately, his grumpy temper meant bad news for the others. Ronan had been right. Rob bumped and banged about the yard all day. The coaches twittered anxiously whenever he was around.
Ow!
Be careful, huffed Henry.
Oh, shut up, will ya, and get moving,
barked Rob. The engines were beginning to lose patience. They made no secret of it in the shed that night. That Rob is such a pain in the bunker, scowled James.
The Fat Controller should never have brought him here if this is how he behaves, huffed Gordon.
Some of us have tried being friendly with him, but we've just about had it, pouted Percy. Come now, everyone, Edward interjected. Rob may be a bit abrupt, but he's just hoping to be given the chance to perform outside the yard. Throwing your weight around is not the way to get promoted, huffed Thomas. A shunter like him is better off confined to the yards. I never said that when you wanted to get out of the yards, Thomas, retorted Edward sternly. Thomas looked shamefully at his buffers.
He makes a very good point, though, snorted Gordon. Rob has done nothing but give industrial engines a bad name since he came here. If he continues behaving like this, we must be firm. Show him that a shunter like him belongs in the yard and should be kept there instead of trespassing onto the main line.
Percy huffed. So, Thomas, Duck, and I were trespassing when we worked in the yards, were we, Gordon?
I didn't say that, retorted Gordon. If Rob wants to perform more than shunting duties on this railway, then by all means let him prove his worth. It goes without saying, though, that he won't get very far with his current behavior.
Edward sighed. He knew there was no talking to them tonight. The next morning, the yardmaster came to the sheds. Rob, Gordon's express needs to be prepared urgently. Could you fetch the coaches, please?
Why can't he fetch them? Grumbled Rob, looking at Ronan.
He is still building steam, said the yardmaster. Percy is readying James's coaches, and Thomas is preparing Henry's goods. That leaves you. Now hop to it. Grumbling horribly, Rob fussed away. He was still fuming when he reached the carriage sidings. He bumped them angrily as he backed down. Be careful, scolded his driver. Rob just scoffed and rolled his eyes. Then it happened. The shunter had just fastened the coupling when Rob jerked forwards violently, knocking his crew off the footplate. By the time they picked themselves up, Rob was steaming away. Get back here, you stupid engine! Shouted the driver. Rob hadn't realized what had happened.
Come on, he fussed to the coaches.
You've lost your crew! You've lost your crew! They cried. But Rob took no notice. As they approached the station, Rob tried to stop, but found to his alarm that he couldn't.
Driver, brakes. Driver?
Rob then realized he had no one aboard his cab.
Oh no, I can't stop! Someone help!
Without a driver or fireman to stop him, Rob puffed through the big station and began steaming off down the main line. Stop! Stop! Shouted Edward.
Come back, Rob!
Cried Ronan. Without thinking twice, Edward took off after the runaway train. Rob whistled frantically as he rocketed along the main line. Quick-thinking signalmen diverted passing trains into sidings and loops to let the runaway saddle tank thunder by. Edward was panting up behind with every ounce of steam he had, but it was too late. At Crosby Station, Rob was diverted into a siding. His momentum had slowed, but it wasn't enough to avoid a disaster. Rob had swerved off the main line and collided with a ballast train, and unfortunately, his front was badly damaged. Edward soon arrived on the scene and was very cross. Well, You wanted to escape the yard, and you've only ended up putting yourself out of action. Rob said nothing. He just looked shamefully at his buffers. Soon, James arrived with the breakdown train and the Fat Controller.
Trying to make yourself known to those on the main line, were you, Rob? He boomed.
Sir,
I think you've said and done enough, scolded the Fat Controller. You've been racing around the yards, bashing our trucks and coaches like a bumper car. You've been rude and disrespectful to all my engines, and you've caused great damage to yourself, as well as causing minor injury to your crew.
Rob just looked down shamefully.
Ronan has told me about your longing for a break from shunting, continued the Fat Controller. I'm more than willing to allow all my engines a change once in a while, but this is not the way to achieve it. Once you're repaired, you will stay in the sheds until further notice.
The Fat Controller turned and strode sharply away.
It seems Ronan will have to manage the busy summer rush on his own for a while, he sighed.
Rob's face turned as white as snow as the stout gentleman walked sternly away. The little green engine said nothing as he was taken away to the works. I think it might have been better had you heeded some warnings, huffed Edward. You may be an engine wanting a change, but if you're to become a member of this railway, you must put right the error of your ways before it's too late. Rob said nothing as Edward puffed away. For once, he actually listened to some wise words. As the workmen began attending to Rob's damaged buffer beam, he sighed. He had a lot to think about.